And that's so hard, right? Because we have egos. Our ego loves to get, I don't want to say thank you. That's annoying. I want to be annoyed. But you're right.
I want to whine.
Yeah. Sometimes it just feels good to whine. But I think I've talked about this a lot too, whether it's a person in your life that's annoying you, or there's a problem, or there's a stress or whatever, or they have a disagreement with you, which is happening so much these days. But what can they teach me? That's what I've been trying to focus on. Even if I'm not like really wild about the person, or I feel like they're rubbing me the wrong way, there's bad energy, I'm still trying to think, just, I don't have to be best friends with them, but what can I learn right now from them? They are, people that don't always agree with you are some of your best teachers. Hey everybody, welcome to Lauren.live, the spirituality, health, and lifestyle podcast. I've got Don Ollsin with me. How are you doing today, Don?
I'm doing good.
Cool. Thanks for being on the show. Yeah. I was just telling Don, for anyone who's listening, this won't really resonate, but for people that do watch, I just want to make a quick note. You're used to seeing my fun wallpaper in the background, but I'm actually in a new space today, which is really exciting. I'm really grateful. I'm in a new studio, and so in the coming weeks, you will see a fun wallpaper coming, but I'm a little stark, plain, purity white going on today. But anywho, and that's a good reminder too for people that are listening. If you ever want to go over to the YouTube channel, you can actually watch most of the interviews live, which is really fun to be able to see, the face of the guest and see us interact. But so Don is a healer of many sorts, but specializes in the herbal realm, if you will. He's an herbalist and, a pioneer in that category. He's been working for most of his life, healing with herbs and in the herbal world. So I'm going to let you really explain what that means. I think we all know what an herb is, or herbs, or nature, and how that can heal. But Don has healed many people, and I think it's best just to hand you the mic and let you kind of explain what does that mean, an herbalist or herbal healing, and then also just a little background on who you are and how you got into this area.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate the work you're doing, and I really appreciate your keeping the spiritual approach alive, because I think it's so vital and so important. I feel like we need all the soulfulness that we can get, and I feel myself, I work with soulful medicine, meaning that it's connected to nature, and it's, as we were talking earlier, it's connected to the seasons and the cycles. And, they have carbon dated plaques from what was Persia back then that are 70,000 years old that have pictures of the herbs that I use all the time, like yarrow and stuff like that. So it's a long history. And also Carl Jung says that in our psyches, we have much deeper relationship to the herbs than to pharmaceutical medicine. Not pharmaceutical medicines are important, necessary, but soulfully. I tell a cute story to my students. Do you ever go to your medicine cabinet and open it up, get out some aspirins, tip them onto your hand, and go, "Oh wow, that was so beautiful." But, you go to a rose, and rose is a medicine. It's used for the liver. Like, you go, whoa, this is my medicine. So, and it's also living, and it's also sentient, so we can have a relationship to it. So that's, again, a lot of what I teach is a very relational, to your medicine. There's so much to talk about. So maybe I'll start with a little bit of who I am and where how I got here. So I'm an elder, and I grew up in Vancouver in the 60s. And so, of course, that was a huge dynamic time. And I had the great privilege to see so many people live, from the Doors to Janis Joplin to Jimi Hendrix, you name it. But it was a very fertile, time in Vancouver. Also was kind of the birth of the spiritual Eastern, that happened a lot. And so, of course, I got on that bandwidth. And so in 1969, I ended up going to a new restaurant that was just opened in Vancouver called the Golden Lotus Restaurant. And it was a vegetarian restaurant, as I mentioned. And, that was January 1969. And then by September of 69, I was connected to a teacher. I went to India to study with a teacher for 6.5 months, which was one of the best decisions of my life. I'm very into the shamanic traditions too, and we'll talk about that later. But my teacher, some people say these Indian teachers are more like priests or like religious thing, but they're shamans. Like this guy would have the scorpions follow him in a row, and then when he sat down and meditate, they'd line up around him. He'd have snakes come to the ashram, and he had a tree growing through his house. They're just really nature. I went to the Ganges on the Rishikesh on the banks of the Ganges, and I met a man named Yogi Raghavacharya who was studied with my teacher, but he was 110 years old, and his home was carved into the side of the hill, and it was dirt, but it was a nice home. It was, so I'm just saying it's a very earthy religion over there, not sort of, the sky and the earth is my temples, is what my teacher would say. So in the Golden Lotus, we served herb teas. And in 1969, that was really unique. So it was simple things like chamomile, peppermint, but some, a little bit more esoteric for the times, like raspberry leaf and stuff like that. So it's kind of funny. My teacher, he was very big on us supporting ourselves and, paying our own way in life. So I was a young man and I had to pick a career. So I chose herbs. I started with natural medicines. And so I first started with a natural food store. I actually started with a vegetarian restaurant myself. Within a year, I moved and opened a natural food store. And the natural food store had a really strong dispensary of herbs. So in 1976, I sold that and opened my herb store, which only closed during the pandemic. It was open for 45 years. I ran it for 18 years and then it changed hands. So that gives you a little bit of, sure, very basic start.
Well, that's great. Wow. Sounds like you've done so much. And I guess we could talk about what you're doing now later, but let's go back to all those things. Cause the 1960s and the 70s, and we, a lot of people, know that was a time, meditation and yoga and spirituality and freedom and love and peace and drugs, and both, some that were like psychedelics, but others that might be a little bit more not hallucinogenic necessarily, but just natural herbs coming in, like you said, teas and different things that were new that now chamomile's standard, right? Like that's not that new or weird, but I think a lot more people are familiar with herbs. I've done, some different alternative medicines, and I love like even just you're saying the raspberry leaf tea, like I'm pregnant, and at the end of my pregnancy last time I drank that, I know that's, all of us are familiar with certain herbs that help with certain things, but we don't dive as deep as you have, right? And so I guess maybe we'll start with this. I love it. I love the idea of natural healing and medicine. But I get kind of overwhelmed, right? There's so many different herbs and so many different things. So I think, one, we have to be in tune with what's going on in our body to know which ones to use, correct? But also, like, what's a good way to just like introduce yourself to the world of herbs? Because I want to use them more and learn about them, but I do admit I get kind of overwhelmed. Like, are there any just basic ones that anyone could try that are very gentle and?
Well, your very famous ones like chamomile, like
rose teas,
million cups drink,
Take a quick break to tell you about a special app I've been using called Femometer. One of the app's main objectives is to help track women's periods and precisely pinpoint ovulation days, finding your most fertile days to help you get pregnant. Femometer can auto-recognize LH and ACG test results, give you daily advice for conception and ovulation predictions created by app algorithms based off your personal data. The app is suitable for people from adolescence to premenopausal, with its main focus on people looking to conceive. As I'm currently pregnant, my favorite feature in the app is reading the baby development diary. Each week I get to see the progress my baby is making and read about the baby's size and new developments. If you're looking to track your cycle, trying to conceive, or want to read about your pregnancy development, I highly recommend downloading Femometer from the App Store. You can use the invitation code Lauren, capital LAUREN, all caps, to receive a 7-day free trial and 50% off your first purchase. Make sure to apply this code when you register with the app.
Rose hips, very, very, safe herbs.
Lavender.
Lavender's a bit strong.
Okay.
It's good. I mean, what I recommend, of course, this is my plug, but it's a plug for Ayurveda, for example, a system that's built around understanding the energetics of the plants, makes it much more personable than just you taking something, because in a system like Ayurveda, you are type of constitution, and there are 3 active elements: fire, air, and water. Those are the active constituents. That translates into pitta, fire, vata, air, and kapha, earth. And one reason I bring that is I build out from that the basic foundation to the 6 qualities, from that to the tastes, and then from that to everything that benefits your constitution or doesn't benefit your constitution. So especially that when that goes to herbs, that's one of the first things we do. And even the tastes. And so there's no problem in acute situations to use an herb, any herb, and it doesn't matter what taste it is. So, like if you need something like golden seal for an infection and you're of the air constitution, which doesn't do well with bitter in long term, then it's okay to use that short term. But if you start using something long term, you're going to imbalance yourself because that taste is not for your constitution. For myself, when I first got into Ayurveda, I loved yogurt, and I was living on yogurt because I ran a store, and I was the leader of the spiritual group I was in, and I just was really busy and had children and, everything. And so I'd eat yogurt, but I always had a burning, pit in my stomach, and I was kind of, that's weird, And the minute I learned Ayurveda, yogurt's sour, and I'm a fire constitution. So again, yogurt's fine. I didn't stop eating yogurt, I just stopped living on it.
Yeah, not so much.
Making it a dominant thing. So how about that answers your question?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's many aspects to it. And I think, a lot of people, we've been I always try to be careful how I frame this, trained. And, it's not a bad negative connotation. It's the way our world works right now. We're used to pharmaceuticals, right? We're used to, you open the thing, like you said, you take your Advil, and most of the time it works for most of us that are taking it every so often, not on a daily basis. But as we know, drugs have side effects. People know the horrible epidemics of opioids and all the pain, the side effects of drugs. I think we've all taken a drug and had a side effect, right? And it has a time and a place, and critical times. I think, there's a time and a place for pharmaceuticals, but then, you also flip side, same thing with nature, right? You could take certain herbs too much, and it could also have things that imbalance your body, right? So I think just to kind of, like you were saying, I think it's about balance and, educating yourself and becoming familiar.
Yeah, traditionally herbs are a lot safer. They are.
Definitely safer.
There's a lot less deaths from them.
I just meant, like you said, you could imbalance your body.
Yeah.
You need to know when to take it.
No, they're strong. They're strong foods. Like they're concentrated foods. Let's go to I like the pharmaceutical aspect. Is like a lot of people don't know that aspirin was developed from the willow. So, willow was used for pain. And so they, analyzed it and learned how to make a synthetic version of it. So I was just telling you earlier about soulful medicine, just in case that isn't on the recording, but it's like you don't go to your cupboard, open your medicine cabinet and dump out your aspirins and go, oh, wow, they're so beautiful. Yeah. But willow trees are gorgeous, and if you, go and watch them and be with them, then it's much more of a connection, and you can, and they're amazing plants. They're, they're very communicative plants. So which is another thing, is plants are sentient, so you can actually communicate with plants. Yeah. I know you have a spiritual approach, so that's why I bring it up, because panpsychism is like all nature's sentient alive. And then when I was trained I had the great good fortune, after I met my guru in about 1980, I met a shaman in my area, a woman who was a native, and where we live in the Pacific Northwest, where you live, the fantastic thing is their culture wasn't totally stamped out like it was in most parts of the world. So they still have their big houses. They still live their rituals. And the beautiful thing about my teacher, Ellen, she passed just a couple of years ago at age 95. But she was, I told you I want to tell you a story about Seattle. Well, she was in Canada at Cooper Island, and there was a residential school, but she was actually from Chief Seattle's tribe. So she was an American. So they didn't put her in a residential school. She was taught by the elders instead of going to residential school. So she was a carrier of all the knowledge. I didn't learn this till her about 70th birthdays. One of the elders got up and told the story why she was so special. So two things. One is our culture, it was a culture that maintained itself, and they've been here for a long, long time. And of course she taught very much our connection to the plants, they're our brothers and sisters. They're not, they're not inanimate things that are there for our use. They're for us to have a relationship with.
Mm-hmm. And I wanted to clarify too, that story is very great. Thank you for sharing that, by the way. I wanted to clarify, maybe I wasn't communicating well. I definitely agree with you that herbs are more gentle than pharmaceutical. I guess what I was trying to portray was that no matter what you're putting in your body, it's important to balance and learn the relationship with it, whether it is a pharmaceutical or from the earth, like you said, the relationship, the balance, the harmony, you know what I mean? Being in sync or in tune. And, maybe something that you take that's natural might be different for me, right? Because of our energies. So that's kind of what I was, I guess, I wanted to clarify that.
I totally support you, because that's why I teach that, because you can imbalance yourself. And same, like I give the example of food. So you can do that with food too. You can do it with exercise. With the fire constitution, I literally have a friend who was jogging in the hot sun at noon, which is when the fire's most dominant, and died of a heart attack. You go to extreme, like a pitta should be swimming in cold water, not running in the high heat. So anyways, that's how we, live in more harmony with nature and her cycles.
Yeah. And I think, like a big message that I want to get out and talk about, I just feel, and you're the expert, so we'll get more out from you, but think about the pharmaceutical industry is so new if you really think about history, right? And so you look at shamans, tribes, people before, any of our great grandparents were alive. What were they doing to heal themselves? They were using the earth, right? There are things put on the earth for a reason. And so I guess I love that we are shifting into more holistic approaches. Natural medicine is obviously more popular now than it was, 20 years ago. It's more accepted mainstream, right? Like I can barely get into a naturopath. That's amazing. That's good that they're busy, right? But I think, I just think there's still an uncomfortable feeling for a lot of people because we just rely so much on the Western medicine. And I'm not plugging them down by any means. I'm just saying I do think we could heal ourselves more naturally, but we're afraid because we've kind of been taught our whole lives. Like you just take the aspirin, you don't try something else, right? Or you just take the antibiotic every single time. You don't really think for yourself, like, what should I do? What do I want to do with my body? Like, should I try something else? And so I guess, what are your thoughts on that? Like, what are some ways that we can get comfortable?
I think that it is changing. And for those who want it, those who don't, that doesn't matter. But one of my favorite all-time remedies, which is indirectly related to the herbs, is called propolis. And it's made from the resin gum from the beehive. And the bees go primary to the poplar tree and chew on the resin and then bring it and put their enzymes in, they bring it back to their hive and use it to keep disease out. And if an invader gets in or something, they'll bomb an propolis. Propolis means before the city, so it protects the hive. So this has been used for 2,000 years medicinally, but they took it to a hospital in Europe and they proved it in over 5,000 cases it worked effectively. So it doesn't damage your microflora or your biome. So why not try it first? I will take an antibiotic, and I have taken an antibiotic. I've hardly taken them, but I had an abscess tooth and it wasn't responding to the herbs. And of course, I didn't want to, be stupid. And when they pulled the tooth out, man, it was a good thing I took them. Right. But most of the time I can do it with natural remedies, and that's better for you if you can, right. But, if you can't, then you certainly take, antibiotics and
right. Yeah, I think there's always a mixture of Western and Eastern or natural and,
Also working together. There's a book by Mosby's Handbook, and I can't remember quite the name of it. Maybe we can put it on the notes. But it's really cool. My nurse practitioner had it open on her desk, and it's a really, really good book of herbs and pharmaceuticals. And it's not like a lot of the things were don't use herbs. It was, no, if you're using this herb in this pharmaceutical, take this at this time and take that at that time, and more of a blend, and again, you can, like, herbs heal, herbs nurture, herbs increase your chi, your life energy. They're living, they're foods. And so you can be on a regime of, say, cancer drugs that you need for the curing the cancer. But meanwhile, you can be really helping your body. And so you're more resilient and you bounce back.
Right. Yeah. Because that, as we know, chemo has a lot of other side effects. Can be really hard on your body. It can also help you, but exactly. I think a balance is wonderful, and that's a good way to maybe start experimenting. And oh my gosh, there's so many ways to take the conversation. I was just thinking of a few different things. Like, even I had a guest on the episode hasn't gone live, so I won't really talk too much about it yet. But we were talking about iodine, for instance. It's pretty natural, right? You can find that in food sources, I believe, and like some of, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think do like certain seaweeds or things from this.
Yeah, seaweeds are high. Yeah, bladderwrack is the highest.
Yeah, you can find iodine in some of those things, right? It's natural. Well, what do they use in the hospital clean before surgery? Iodine. So I think a lot of people don't realize too, a lot of pharmaceuticals or things that are used in Western medicine stem from natural sources, but some of it, not iodine necessarily, but other things, like you said, of the willow tree, and it can be manipulated and it becomes synthetic. And then our bodies, obviously, they do it in a way where most of the time it's safe to ingest with small amounts or a short term. But as we know with side effects, it's also very synthetic, and our bodies don't really know how to break that down, which is why there's a lot of side effects and health problems, chronic illness, I believe, from medicines that are taken, long periods of time that are really destroying our bodies. And it's such a hard catch-22 for people, because I think they want to, here's what I guess I want to talk about: treating and masking. So you can go to the doctor and you can get something and it'll mask the symptoms so you feel better, right? But the difference with holistic is sometimes they would go deeper in, why are you having this issue? you know what I mean, why you're having these skin dermatitises. It's not just the topical treatment, it's inner in your body, right? So I guess that's my one complaint with modern medicine is it seems to kind of Band-Aid approach, which isn't really helping you. You just don't feel it. So I know this is long-winded, but I'm getting to my point. For instance, here's my question. Let's say you have a cold. You're not feeling well. And instead of taking, maybe you're taking a mixture of things, some zinc, vitamin C, but you're also taking Advil, you're taking some Dayquil, which I really don't like things like Dayquil, but let's just say you're taking it because you're miserable. You've got some stuff to help you rebound, vitamin C, D, zinc, but then you're also masking yourself, helping yourself sleep, maybe helping your mucus dry up with synthetic fake chemicals, okay? So great. If you were to go the herbal approach, are there things that could mask some of the discomfort and pain, or is it more repairing only? Because that would be the biggest difference.
No, it's like for a lot of people, willow, and there's, preparations out in the market that are done for you that are really concentrated that come out of Europe mostly because they have more of a natural pharmacy over there than we did. And so one's called Pain Away, and it's literally a liquid extract of willow. Like they make a strong tea out of willow by boiling it, but then they drop it through a modern machine that turns that liquid into a powder, and then you take one of those, and they work really well for me most of the time.
So not only can it treat you, but it's helping with the pain.
And the pain, yeah.
Sure. Okay.
And then there's okay, back to your thing about all drugs. I believe all drugs are built on a plant base because they can't, like, they're not God. They can't create something out of nothing.
Sure.
So that's what, there's a silly movie called The Medicine Man with somebody stars in it. But that movie the reason they go find all these medicines in the jungle, because they need blueprints to build their drugs on. Okay. So,
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. Think of cocaine.
Let me speak a little bit more to the symptom. It's interesting because we're such a symptom-based culture, and I'm, personally, well, okay, so what I teach is a 4-level thing. So there's treatment, and then there's awareness. So awareness is, getting more of aware, like, when does this happen? How does this happen? What's it like? What's right about it? And then there's life enhancement and prevention. So we work on the symptom, whatever it is. If it's a headache, we apply the herbs, or, again, we differentiate. Is it a hot headache? Is it a crampy headache? Because then that'll make a choice of what kind of herb we want to use. But then like you were saying, we want to not, in the system that I study and teach, Dreambody or process-oriented psychology, symptoms are messages from our psyche. So it's not just a symptom. It's an opportunity to learn something. So we also go into that. Don't ignore the fact that it hurts, and we want to stop the pain. That's be silly not to do that. And that would include taking an aspirin if you had to. Like, it's not, but go beyond that. Sure. Go into, like, what's the message here? What's it trying to tell me? Do I need to slow down? Am I going too fast? Do I need to, and then, if we also look at, like I said, dietary things, and then since we learn from it, then we can potentially prevent it from. So I have symptoms that I've had in my life that no longer are there because I dealt with them here when they were active, but I used my awareness, and now I've prevented them from coming back. Because I've changed my lifestyle, I've changed my psyche, because sometimes it's like, there's a thing called the Santiago theory. It came out of Chile. It was Maturana and Varela were the two doctors who named it. and it's called structural coupling. We are constantly in relationship to our inner and outer environment. We are merging as we speak. We are being made by our environment, by what we eat, what we think. And I think the new term they're using in science is epigenetics. But the Maturana theory is, I love that. Like, so that becomes, you're in this beautiful dance with creation instead of being separate from it. Like,
right.
you are everything that you eat, see, think, feel.
Yeah,
I'm glad relationships.
Glad you brought that up because, since this is heavily a spiritual show, I like we're talking about health and herbs, but the spiritual side of it that is so true. What is the illness or symptom teaching you?
Yeah.
One, it could be simple, like I'm dehydrated, I have a headache. Drink more water, right? Or it could be way more in depth than that. You have trauma and stress, and you're holding it in, and then you have headaches, or you're not sleeping well. I mean, it could be anything. These are just small examples.
Beautiful, yeah, that's beautiful. Like, I love your examples.
But think of, we know this stress.
Really extreme,
stress. We know that stress can cause so many chronic illnesses, right? So, I mean, I think, to think that energy or experiences or, whatever is in our world isn't affecting us. Oh my goodness, that's so silly. Like, of course it's connected.
So silly, yeah, I know.
It makes so much sense. But you've heard of stories too, even like people dying of like a broken heart or like heart attacks. Like, I really think it's correlated, or, like even my husband, I'm talking about he's had some real issues with like acid reflux in his throat and his vocal cord. He even has changed his voice over the years. I didn't know him before, but it just damage from that. And guess what? He's seen some spiritual healers and they said, your throat chakra is so blocked. And that's been something that he works on. And even I know, just as a person, I know him, he had a stutter growing up, which was speaking. It's all so correlated. It's like, oh my goodness. So if you can kind of get in touch with someone like you, what a gift to look a little deeper, ask some questions, get connected, and what's going on in my body and my mind. It's, you know what I mean? So I think the power of the mind can heal a lot too.
We just watched a neurosurgeon, and he's a brain surgeon, and it was beautiful. And, he just rebuffed the fact that we're not hardwired. The brain is more like an ocean full of fish, it's like real life. But he emphasized that, yes, we can change our brain, the traumas, all those kind of things by reframing, by therapy, by, and Dreambodies, process-oriented psychology is one type of psychology. So, but it's really effective. It's, really changed my life.
Yeah. And I think even just like I'm learning, like giving yourself, or if you're praying for somebody, like I've done it when my daughter's had a fever, been sick, putting love where the pain is, right? Or so like, if I'm feeling something, like instead of being like, get away virus, you're bad. It's almost like, this sounds silly, but it's almost like accepting it, learning from it, acknowledging you're here and saying,
it's not silly.
I'm putting love there. And I kind of thought that with COVID, and I know this is a tricky, and we kind of said we wouldn't get too deep, which is fine. We can talk a little bit about it, but I think it's a reality. We've been living through it, the pandemic and all the things. But I started thinking about it. Instead of fearing it, I thought, you know what? I'm going to put love there. Like, I acknowledge that you're here. I don't really like you. No one likes you. This is difficult. This is a lot, but I'm placing love around this because it's a learning opportunity. It's our reality. I can't do anything about it. So what I'm going to do is send love there. I mean, that sounds all hippy dippy and great, Lauren, but I guess it's a different approach that's helped me because I tend to be a bit of a hypochondriac. And I thought, instead of fearing it, I'm just going to try to more embrace the reality and send in good energy, because that's literally all I can do. And then also try to take care of myself physically too, right? But
of course, I think they go hand in hand. Yeah, you
have to do both. You still have to do things and eat good food.
There's a book by a doctor named Seltalk. I can't remember his name, but he's literally, we can talk to our cells and they respond. I mean, just like I said, we respond structurally coupling to our inner thoughts, our inner voices, and to the external. So there was a guy that got COVID in the 2020 early on, and he was just somebody at a university stuff. He said, well, I just took the approach of curiosity. I'm curious about this. And so lots of time, again, that's one of the first things to take in relationship to something problem you're having is, first of all, curious, and then also not necessarily to fight it, but to be open to it and see what it wants to teach you, not just, like,
because that can in itself, if you're always pushing everything away, maybe it'll stay longer. Or I don't know.
Yeah,
you don't know. But
I don't know, but they've done enough research on this that there is benefits to it, and the fear factor is huge. So if you're not afraid, then your body can respond better.
Yeah, I agree. And there was one other thing I was going to say, something about just so the person that said to talk to your plants and they'll grow better, they weren't so crazy after all.
I studied with Dorothy McLean. She was one of the founders of the community in Scotland called Findhorn, and they were a group of people in the 50s who they were kind of the beatnik generation, and they were traveling around. And she had already been meditating for quite a long time, but they needed to grow food, and so the one leader of the thing said, "Come on, Dorothy, you got to meditate on the plants and have them tell us how to grow them." And she did that, and lo and behold, people from all the world came to see these incredible vegetables that are growing in not ideal conditions. So I've studied. She just died at 99, and she was near Seattle. So she taught me how to talk to plants. She said, she says it's wild. Like the plants don't understand, especially the trees, why we don't talk to them anymore. They going like, come on, like why do and you go back into all traditions, and they had a relationship to nature, and nature was sentient, and they would communicate with them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I've talked about that before on this show, some of my earlier shows, just about gratitude for Mother Earth, and I've been trying to do that a lot more, and I feel so much more connected. And like the tree hugger, right? There's a reason. Touching, grounding, I think that's become a lot more popular. A lot of people know what that is. Literally standing, dirt, grass, wherever, outside, sand with barefoot, getting that magnetic, energy pull from the earth. But a new approach of even just, you think about what like Native Americans still practice and did practice. You kill an elk or a deer for your meal, and they were very grateful to that animal because it gave them life, right? Well, a lot of us don't think, and I'm not downplaying us, maybe we don't think about it. It's all about consciousness. We sit down and eat our meal. We're just so rushed and busy in this world that we live in. We're humans and we're trying to just do stuff. But I try, when I do, remember to just, whatever it is, whether it's a plant or an animal, like this had to be grown or killed for me to live. Like, oh my gosh, what a gift. Thank you.
One of my kids used to say as his prayer was, "Thank you, food, for letting me eat you."
Hey, it's simple but true.
Yeah.
So
I always love that.
So I think the gratitude aspect of what we eat, the herbs, just, trees in your yard or whatever, like that is so important, that connection that I think a lot of us, not everybody, a lot of people get out in nature and do a great job of this, but
okay, so let me say two things to your audience. One is that next time you're in the city and you're somewhere where there's a tree growing and maybe it looks a bit stressed because it's busy in cars, say hello to the tree or just comfort it. Say, thank you for being here. Thank you for purifying my air, because they are purifying our air. So the other thing about gratitude is, like, my native teacher, Ellen, she was a tough teacher. She wasn't all, she was incredible, but I would phone her up and I'd be whining and, she'd go, "Listen to me." And she'd say, "Have you said thank you?" "What? What do you mean thank you? I'm not thankful." "No, have you said thank you?" So she taught me to say thank you even to the hard things, even to the difficulties. And it changes, like it actually, I hate it. Like I resist it like crazy. Even now when something's, really bothering me, and then her voice will come in my head. "Have you said thank you?" "Oh, no.
Right.
Then Okay, so I say thank you, and then some changes. It's
Yeah.
like you were saying about accepting the, loving the thing, and what I was saying about symptoms and the message. Well, what does this? What's right about this?
Yeah.
Not always what's wrong about it,
Yep.
but even just the attitude of what is right about this.
Mhm.
What's it here? Why is it here?
Yeah. And that's so
Is it
hard, right?
all?
Because we have
Yeah,
egos. Our ego loves to
yeah,
get, I
yeah,
don't want to say thank you.
yeah.
That's annoying.
Oh yeah, yeah,
I want to be
yeah,
annoyed.
yeah, yeah,
But you're
yeah,
right.
yeah. I want a wine.
Yeah, sometimes it just feels good to whine. But I think I've talked about this a lot too, whether it's a person in your life that's annoying you, or there's a problem, or there's a stress or whatever, or they have a disagreement with you, which is happening so much these days. But what can they teach me? That's what I've been
Yeah.
trying to focus on. Even if I'm not like really wild about the person, or I feel like they're rubbing me the wrong way, there's bad energy, I'm still trying to think, just, I don't have to be best friends with them, but what can I
Oh yeah,
learn right now from them?
yeah,
They are,
yeah.
people that don't always agree with you are some of your best teachers.
Oh, totally.
And,
And
and same thing with an illness or something. What is it here to, teach me? So I think the earth can teach us so much, I know you must agree, but,
oh, so much wisdom there, and it's way beyond. It's the connection. It's the, people feel isolated. And yes, we do get isolated from each other, especially this couple of years. But there's a story in India that I love. This teacher gives these two different disciples a bird and says, go kill the bird where somebody's not watching you. So one person goes around the corner, breaks it next, come back. The other one wanders around for a year and finally comes back and with the bird and says, I couldn't find anywhere where nobody was watching. These teachers, well, what do you mean? Well, either I was watching the bird, or the bird was watching me. So it's like, so we're never alone. We like, and nature, like is, I say over and over again, is sentient.
yeah.
Yeah, we can literally, plants can talk to us too. It's not just a one-way street.
I think people, when I'm listening, I'm just like, okay, people might think we're kind of crazy. And then other people are totally, yeah. I had heard this and I resonate so much with it when I learned that, well, that's what I believe. I know that we're conscious beings. I believe that we are in animals. But then when I learned that the planets, Mother Earth or the sun, anything that's in existence is conscious, whoa, that like rocked my world and shook me because I don't know, I have a different relationship with the earth. It's our home. It's beautiful. Why do you think they call it Mother Earth?
Yeah.
Really, there's a reason,
Yeah. Yeah.
That blows my mind though, the conscious planet. Okay, whoa. So this is like, of course, trees have energy and they're existing and they have a consciousness, but it's hard as a human to kind of like wrap my head around that, I guess, if you will.
We're a little bit arrogant and we're a little bit cut off, and reductionism, the last 300 years of science has reduced things to parts and mechanistic models.
Yes.
So nature's an open system that fluctuates all the time and is always, like I said, structural coupling. We're always bringing in things and changing, So, and nature's like that. It's also, like I said, it's so rhythmic and consistent, thank God.
That's true. When I look outside, that's one thing I always think when I look at the trees, the consistency.
Yeah.
They're always there.
They're always there.
They're always there. And no matter what. And the weather changes and there's energy. And I guess it's like, of course, if we're living and we have energy, animals living and they have energy, we know plants have energy. Why wouldn't everything have its own, you know what I mean?
Unique energy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That makes so much sense. Wow. So what are some of your favorite ways or ways that you could just give for some beginners? Like, okay, I feel like I'm in this mechanical world. I want to get more in touch with nature, not only just itself, but also maybe incorporating some herbs and natural things in my life. Like, what are just some basic ways we could do that every day?
Well, I think to start with is start saying hello to your plants and maybe even, and if you have a problem, then try it. Just go to a tree and, be really humble. Like my teacher Ellen would say, like, don't, say, yeah, I'm just, this humble being and stuff, but maybe you could help me. Like, don't approach like the Western dominant thing, like nature was there for us, but, be open to it and ask it if it, has any advice for you around a problem. And, you could be amazed sometimes the answers that come back.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And eventually, hopefully you'll find your favorite trees.
Yeah. There's things you're drawn to. I've noticed. Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you a really powerful story if you want about. Well, I was working with this beautiful Gary oak tree. It was in the Beacon Hill Park in the city of Victoria. And I would go to it all the time. I'd pass it on my way to work, on my way back. I would meditate with it. I would sleep with it. I would bring my crystal and put it there. And like I did this for years and years. And I was studying with Ellen, studying with Dorothy McLean. Well, it was kind of really interesting because it's the beginning of myth of my program that I teach that started in 1986. So it was the winter time, and it was the last class of an evening class I was teaching with a fantastic group of people. My buddy and friend and therapist, Stan, who's still my buddy and friend and therapist and process oriented, did a little ritual. I have people do a presentation at the end. He did little rituals with deer antlers and this powerful plant in the Pacific Northwest called Devil's Club that's related to this indigenous people here. Anyways, it was, and class went on, it was about 10 o'clock at night, and it was snowing, which you're in the Pacific Northwest, doesn't snow that often. So, but we're both in a really beautiful consciousness. Like we're both really, this class was really, got us into this beautiful state. And I looked in and I said, do you want to go? No. I said, okay, let's go see my tree in the park, So we drove into Beacon Hill Park. It's at night. There's Victoria's, newlyweds and nearly dead. So at 10 o'clock, it's usually, it's very quiet. Yeah. So we drive through this park and we pull into the parking lot and we get out of the van and we start walking down to the tree that I'd been meditating with. And all of a sudden my heart goes, and there lying on the ground is this tree. It has snapped and coming out of the trunk. And I'm not a visual person. I don't see things like this seldom. There's this beautiful blue glow. And inside this blue glow is this female form. She says, I called you here because I'm leaving now. My home's been, destroyed or whatever. And I wanted to say goodbye before I left.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And sorry, you had liked that tree before though?
That's the one I did for 5 years. I'm meditating with it. Oh my gosh. Yeah,
that's so cool.
Why did I go there that night? And then my wife found a little piece in a book about trees in Beacon Hill Park, and it talked about that particular tree coming down in that storm, and it was over 500 years old.
Wow.
So it's kind of,
really
so
cool.
you really can build, well, I'll tell you, very simple. I'll leave out the details, but there's a man named Elliot Cohen who lived in Santa Barbara. He went out to the forest and was tuning into plants, and this tree told him to sell his home and move. He said, oh, come on. I'm going to sell my home and move because you tell me to. But he said, So anyways, he sold his home, and shortly thereafter, a wildfire came through and destroyed his home.
Wow.
So
that's wild.
I can tell you some other stories too, but plants, we are in a conscious universe. We're not, it
is. And I think, I try to tap into it more, and it's something that I, want to keep working on. But, different people, you can get messages from spirit guides or past relatives or, through mediums or nature. The point is there's lots of different ways to get, energy and communication and wisdom. And so why would you stop at, of course, why wouldn't nature could provide that for sure. Wow. That's a really cool story about the tree.
I think, back to your question now, I think most people are using herbs now. So all I would just, maybe recommend is they, maybe spend a bit more time smelling the herb they're using, taking some actual energy to taste it. I teach attunements so that, and I have people attuned to earth, air, fire, water, and attuned to plants. So, there's two things. I did a ceremony once with a teaching class, and we did it like ceremoniously, and it wasn't like a psychedelic or anything. It was just a regular, I think it was mugwort or something, which has some effects to it. But when we did a ritual with it, everybody had a more powerful experience. And I'm not saying you have to do a ritual, but maybe take a bit more time drinking your herb tea one day, like the Japanese have a tea ceremony. Right. It's not just, I gotta, there's my echinacea, there's my raspberry, off to the races, like, okay, I'm gonna, this particular time, I've listened to this weird guy in this podcast, I'm gonna just try and really feel this herb and see how it feels in my body. And know that you're structurally coupling with it. It's becoming you. It's not just, you're taking in your cells and,
Wow, that's a good advice. Just kind of gratitude, slowing down, being in the moment, and just kind of connecting more. Yeah. Wow. Well, I think this has been an amazing conversation. My next question, which kind of leads into, or maybe the segue of kind of completing this episode, but I'm obviously really intrigued and curious. And like I said, it can get a little overwhelming. So the beauty of people like you is that you can help coach, mentor, help us learn more, maybe what might be right for us. So how can people find you? And is that what you're currently doing? Is you're helping one-on-one?
DonOllsin.com. Not doing one-on-one. Okay. I'm doing teaching. That's my main process, mentoring. But, I have a lot of live stuff with people, like even virtually, like us here. Sure. So I'm just actually creating a pilot, which is kind of cool. It's based on my course I ran since 1986, live and online. So I've done it many times, but when I did my master's degree when I was 67 in 2013, I did my thesis on transitioning offline classes to online. So I've been really studying this transition to this new world we're in. And so I'm doing a pilot where I'm even putting more involvement, more participation with the students in not only the creation, creating it and participating in it. And also have learned really strongly, I teach a few complex subjects, but I'm learning to drip them out instead of study this, then this, and also integrate it. I'm going to build it all around the elements. So I feel really excited about it. It's a new way of teaching what I've taught for a long, long time. And I think it's really cool for again, for the people that resonate with this, feel like it would be something they want, then I think it's a perfect tool. It's not the science paradigm. It's not this for that. It's not a biochemical model. It's more of a relational model. It's based on my book. I have a book called Pathways to Healing, a guide to herbs, Ayurveda, Dreambody, and Shamanism. So this course is, I wrote that book based on my work with people's, written in 2000. I've been working for 14 years with people. So the book's definitely connected to the course. That's how I wrote it. So if people interested, like we talked about at the very beginning of paradigm, the science paradigm is a paradigm. It's a social construct. It doesn't belong to God, or it's just, we've agreed this is the rules of the game and this is how we'll play the game. Well, Ayurveda is a paradigm. Dreambody is a paradigm. Shamanism is a paradigm. And it's a different point of view, a different relationship and different rules. But you get results that you would not get in the other paradigm, almost because it is different. It is a totally different way of viewing, like we've been talking a little bit about your symptom. Well, what message does this have? That's the dreaming body, you know. In shamanism, you can become the symptom maker or the symptom. So there's a cute story in the Sorcerer's Apprentice, and it was the Disney show that I watched, but that Merlin's having this fight with the sorcerer, right? And they're just going out and they're shape shifting. He turns into one thing, she turns into he turns in, and finally he figures out, I'll become a virus. And the dragon goes, the other person he's battling with, the sorcerer, goes, oh no. Yeah. And it goes into her nose, and that's it. So again, we literally, you know, it's more soulful and more creative. It's not just, what pill do I take? You know, like, wow, why is this happening? Right. How can I get involved? And how can I, you know, learn from this? And how can I take this energy and take this dreaming? This dreaming is happening in my body. This dreaming is happening in my relationships. This dreaming has happening at night. So how can I use that dreaming in my life? Like, how can I flow with the energy and work with it instead of just stopping it? You know? Yeah. Stop. You know?
Totally. Yeah. And I think that's, you know, one thing we've been doing is just like, we want an immediate fix, a quick fix, you know, immediate everything gratification at the tip of our fingers on the phone. It doesn't, not just like illnesses, but just everything is like fast. You know, we're impatient. And I think that's not really how we were designed. That's not how the earth works. Nothing is immediate. I mean, it's forcing us, right? Maybe your illness or your symptoms forcing you to slow down and look around and get connected. And there's so many messages within that. So I really like that you brought that up. Very cool. Well, man, I definitely am intrigued. I want to learn more about herbs and start getting more in touch with things around me. It's always a goal. So it's a good reminder for me. You know, it's a practice, of course. But you know, I do think there's just such a beauty to connecting with nature and using it to help you feel your best and be your best person. Yeah. So I thank you for your work.
Oh. You're very, very well. Thank you for your work too.
I love sharing. This is, I mean, gosh, I feel so lucky to be able to have people like you. I get to learn, but then I'm also sharing with other people. That's the coolest thing.
Well, you give me an opportunity, and that's why I started going as podcast guest. I only started this year doing it on a regular basis. And that's because I want to have this conversation with you. Like, and I want to have this conversation with your guests. Yeah. I want us to dialogue and you know, talk about it. Totally. And then, you know, maybe you disagree with something that we've said in the show, then disagree, you know, like, let's talk about it.
But maybe there's something that, you know, piqued someone. Oh my gosh, like, I'm going through this right now. And how can I look at this a little differently? And maybe it'll change their life. You know? Definitely. Yeah.
Change your point of view can change your life.
Absolutely. Yeah. Cool. Well, I thank you, Don.
You're very welcome.
Yeah. Thank you so much. You guys, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's show. And of course, you can find me on my Instagram account at RealLaurenLive. Thank you guys so much.